It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name is George Cooper and welcome to the show. Another bitterly disappointing defeat for Fulham, this time at the hands of AFC Bournemouth. What is it about the Vitality Stadium? Much like Villa Park, we just never seem to get any luck there. And Antoine Semenyo brace, an absolute bang from Justin Kluivert, was enough to nullify Ryan Sessegnon's heroic goal on the 70th minute. There's lots of talking points to get into this game. Obviously, the situation with JKA, Fulham's lack of a centre forward, playing sort of Josh King in a false nine position, also playing five at the back and still coming to a 3-1 defeat is always going to be a little bit disappointing. But let's hope that after this podcast, we can carry on with our weekend with level heads and a little bit of perspective. I'm delighted to be making his Fulhamish pod debut by Owen McDonald, otherwise known as ZZ Top Fulham. You may have seen his fantastic match reports in the comments section of The Guardian. He's been a wonderful new signing to the Fulhamish squad, making much more of an impact than some of our actual new signings for Fulham. But it's great to have you on board, Owen. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. A bit gutted about last night's result. When Sessegnon scored that goal, I was really looking forward to writing something about our resilience, our sort of mentality. Didn't quite pan out that way, but I think we all know that at this point. So no, it's great to be here. Really looking forward to this.
Great to have you here, mate. Are you like the other sort of like football journalists that you see in the press box? You're watching the game, you've already sort of panned out the narrative, and then you've just got to scratch it all and completely tear it up and start afresh after you.
No, I've learned the hard way that you can't write like that because you only set yourself up for a fall. So no, not quite like that.
We're also blessed by the return of Mr. Cam Ramsey from a very dark and gloomy room over there in Sutton. Is your mood matching your sort of aesthetic that you're going for today? How are you doing, Cam?
I'm always relatively moody, but it's great to be back, boys. Honestly, we try and get some joy out of this podcast, even if it's just laughing at ourselves more than anything else. So pleased to be back, and what a team we have on the podcast today as well. I have to say, absolute stars in the making here.
It's great to have you back, Cam. And we're also joined by Mr. Dan Cook, who I really feel for this Saturday morning because he had the unenviable task of driving Sammy James to and from Bournemouth, watching the game in the sodden South Coast, which was hit by a storm last night. And then, as some of you may have seen from the quick take, Dan, you look like you just jumped in the swimming pool, mate. You were absolutely drenched, having to go over the disappointing defeat. And now you've got to do it all again on Saturday morning as well. So, I mean, MVP, well done, mate. You're doing God's work. But how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Do you know what? The storm is partially my fault because I think about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, I referred to it as pathetic because everyone had been saying, "Oh, Storm Amy's coming, Storm Amy's coming." And I was like, here in London, I was like, it was a little bit drizzly. There was barely any wind. I was like, this is overrated. And I really ate my words on that walk back from the Vitality. I was drenched. It was brutal.
I see you were sort of querying with the Met Office, like, cool, this is Storm. I can't believe they've given this little bit of drizzle his own name. Pathetic. And then, little did you know what was around the corner. You got some 3-word reviews for us, I believe. If you wouldn't mind kicking off proceedings, please, Dan.
Absolutely. If we go to Mark Twomey's actually first, I think this will be a topic that we've had. So don't score first. That's sort of suits what seems to be an issue with Fulham, which is bizarre. Mashallah Muniz, great name, with wet, windy, woeful, which summed up my evening. There was Matt Wall with feeling cherry familiar, which I also liked, as well as Rick Cardis with another cherry capitulation, which is a bit of a stretch of a pun, but also one that I quite enjoy, actually. And then finally, there was a couple on Instagram that need shouting out as well. Our very own Adam Farquharson with, this is excellent, Jonah Kusi, where are you? I mean, that is superb work. And Samuel Seastone with drown and out.
Glib, I would say. We'll dive straight in. What did you reckon of the lineup, Owen? So obviously a bit of a shake-up. We were speculating what would happen in the absence of Muniz and Raul. and we found out that Marco is going to go with a sort of front three of Wilson, Iwobi and Josh King. Sort of looked like they were going to mix it up a little bit, be fairly fluid, but we also started with a back five, Issa Diop coming in. It's good to see him get a run out. But what did you make of the starting lineup upon first inspection came out?
I find it really frustrating, really, that the first thing we sort of switch to, the second we're asked to tweak it a little bit, is a back five, because whilst it does make sense on paper, in the sense that you've sort of fortifying the back walls, you're trying to make it a bit harder for a team like Bournemouth, who love to attack and love to throw people forward to get into your final third. What it ends up is the attacking parts of the team have a lot more work to do, because you've taken one player out of that sort of six that go beyond the back line, and are then centering the team's like centre of mass around the back. So especially when you've not got that striker, like if Muniz had played last night, for instance, it's much easier for the wingers to play off him and to sort of move into the final third without dragging the centre-backs towards them. We found that, Wilson didn't help himself by having a really, really poor hour of football, so couldn't seem to even control the ball last night, to be honest. But King, great player. We obviously love him. He's really taken to his new sort of starting role. But it's a big ask to ask him to be in that sort of central position with quite tough centre-backs. I thought Diakite was really quite onto him last night and really put in some crunching challenges. And then Iwobi, he usually is quite dependable, but I thought he also struggled because he's not really, as good as he is and as versatile as he is, he's not really a sort of bombastic attacking winger like Semenyo to take a team just directly to the opposition. So you've got three players sort of asked to do a really tough attacking role. And then the two midfielders behind them, Lukic and Berger, weren't really up to it either. They're sort of more, they like possession and they like control and calm. They're not really the generals that are going to take the game to the opposition like Scott and Adams did. So I think it was really asking a lot for that formation to take the game to Bournemouth like we needed to against a really quite athletic opposition.
Yeah, it just seemed at times as though there was no obvious place where our goal was going to come from, Cam. And I think that especially with the, the intensity that Bournemouth pressed with, Josh King did sort of admirably in the job that he was given to sort of link up play a little bit. But I don't know, I just felt like there was no massive strategy when it came to our attacking play. What did you make of this decision from Marco?
Well, yeah, I think first and foremost, without a number 9, which we've already touched on, it was just staying in the game for as long as we possibly could do and picking up those offensive scraps whenever we could do as well. It's always very, very, very hard to control a game in an offensive sense when you don't necessarily have a big strapping striker to play off. With two diminutive players through the middle in Wilson and King, trying to grab a foothold in fairly difficult conditions when you've got Bournemouth's defence pressing on you at basically every given moment. It was few and far between, and it was a bit of a joyless game, obviously, before Sessegnon opened the scoring for us. Absolutely fantastic finish from him as well. But I suppose that's just a byproduct of not planning properly in the summer. Obviously, you can't foresee a scenario where both of our strikers and leading strikers are out at the same time. But when you have the Kusi-Asare on the bench, what was it, a £4 million loan deal we got for him as well, something like that. We seem to have had our pants pulled down a little bit, and Marco just doesn't seem convinced by him whatsoever. So there's no green shoots where that's concerned. It seems like he's been left to wallow in the mud a little bit, and he's just there to gain some first team experience on the bench without any minutes, just being in amongst a first team environment more than anything. But no, I think in dribs and drabs we actually conducted ourselves fairly well. That goes without saying. The complete capitulation in the final 20 minutes, that doesn't go unseen, of course. But I still think that in the mains we were the better team, but not really too much of a cutting edge. But then again, like I say, that is kind of it's kind of expected when you don't necessarily play to your usual standards and usual setup. And a 5 at the back I thought worked quite well. Again, for the majority of the game, we completely cut adrift towards the back end of the game as Bournemouth built up a head of steam. But it's just another game where taking a lead and we just can't step on their necks and we can't seem to kill it off. There's no killer instinct, and yeah, it's something that Marco definitely has to look at moving forward. I'm sure he would have planned. He had the whole week knowing that Raul and Muniz were likely to be out of contention, but it remains to be seen when they're actually going to be back in the first team fold. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and see if there's another alternative solution for us, because it certainly didn't work last night. Like I say, albeit in trying conditions on the south coast, but Bournemouth for the vast majority of the game they weren't even in it, and it was theirs. It was ours for the taking really, and we just didn't seem to grab the impetus. But the vitality, it's never ever an easy hunting ground for us. We never seem to get any joy there. So I guess it's a result which was completely written on the walls before kickoff, but it's just the manner in which we lost. And it's something that definitely has to be addressed, of course. So we'll see what preparations are in line for the week ahead, heading into a very, very difficult couple of fixtures. And that's about the long and short of it, really, from my opinion, anyway.
I don't want to be toxically positive, because I feel like this. I've done back-to-back pods now, and I think I called for optimism, and I did a whole little monologue about how things aren't as bad as they seem, and I did have a bit of a different perspective, I guess, to a lot of people, because I was there last night. Right, more Fulham fans will have watched that on the telly than could have been at the Vitality last night, given the size of the ground. After the first 10 minutes, I was really concerned. It felt wrong. It wasn't working. And it looked like the game was going to get away from us really quickly. And we fell into an accidental solution, I think. And we played, after that first 10 or 15, I thought we played like 60 minutes of really good away football and conducted ourselves really well. And the solution was one I thought that actually was going to make it even worse. I thought, so with Sasha Lukic on the pitch, he's probably our best midfielder in that role. And him going off and his ability to sort of snap into tackles a bit, put his foot on the ball, losing that and bringing on Tom Cairney, who is not as good out of possession, I thought was going to really kill us. But actually what TC did was, it was a bit of like a counter punch, a bit of like attack being the best form of defence, that sort of stuff, because all it actually took was someone to put their foot on the ball and wrestle back a bit of possession. And so in that first 10-15, where we were so focused on being resolute and well set out of possession, TC changed that and flipped it completely and said, no, let's get our foot on the ball, let's play our game, and maybe we can control this with the ball as opposed to without it. And from then on, up until we scored, I thought it was a really admirable away performance. A really tough ground to go to, a ground that, they've had a great start to the season, but they were great last season as well. And teams struggle to go to the Vitality, they struggle against that sort of football. I think if you could pick the worst weather conditions to play a team like them in as well, it would have been last night, because it was brutal there, and their relentlessness and their directness is the last thing you want when the wind's blowing, the rain's in your face, it's swirling. And I thought there were so many positives. And there are, I'm adamant, and I will hold my hands up, there are huge negatives as well here, right? We can't say everything's fine and rosy. We've just lost 3-1 after going one up again. But from my perspective at the ground, I wasn't as angry, and I've come out of that game with less fury and pointing fingers at people as I think maybe people who weren't there. And that might be on me. But I feel like I just saw different things to maybe what the television portrayed. That Fulham were okay in this game, and actually I thought were not only value for a point, I thought we were value for 3, but we still need to address the issues that were there. But I don't think it was as bad as everyone was saying.
I would have to agree that I wasn't at the game. I watched it on television, and then I went back and revisited it this morning with a bit of a clearer head. And I think given the situation that Fulham were in, we're without our 2 starting strikers. We're going away to, they're second in the league at the moment, Bournemouth. They're a fantastic side. It's a ground which historically we don't really have much luck at. And it was just, there were so many things stacked against us. And I think all factors considered, I don't think that it's an embarrassing result. And I don't think we need to maybe do as much soul searching as some people may think. I think, look, it's we know what they're like. We know the quality that they've got on the counter, the quality that they've got going forward, and we did put in an admirable performance, as you said, Dan, at many for a big stretch of the match. Unfortunately, it fell apart, and 3 goals in the last sort of 25 minutes of the match ultimately was our undoing. I mean, let's come on to the goals. We'll start with ours, Owen. I mean, it was for the first half, both sides recorded an XG of just 0.11, which is the lowest combined tally in the first half of any Premier League game this season, which I found quite hard to believe because Leno made a couple of good saves, notably from Semenyo. I think he made a good save from Tyler Adam in the early stages as well. We didn't obviously have much luck. But it was the double substitution of Wilson and King. Kevin came on and Chukwueze, and he made an instant impact. I thought Chukwueze. It was a brilliant ball through from Sess and just a real good poacher's finish. At this point when this goal went in, did you think Fulham are going to go on to win this game, or were you, as a lot of people feel when Fulham go 1-0 up, thinking, "Oh God, here we go, we're in for a hellish last 20 minutes"?
It was definitely in the back of my mind. I mean, I think it was a really good substitution or double substitution by Silva. You bring on 2 explosive, fast players right at a time when Fulham are having to throw back against Bournemouth substitutions. Chukwueze, I think we saw in the cup, he's got something that is a bit different to the other attackers for Fulham. And instantly, he links up with Sessegnon. He takes the midfielder away from Sessegnon's run. He then sets up a really nicely played through ball. And we have the goal. We have a really good finish too. I think it's quite tricky to actually score in tight quarters, especially when you've got the rain beating down. You've not got the full grip. A few strikers were slipping over today. So today it was a really good moment. And I thought, had we just kept our cool a little bit, we really could have gone on to win that game. However, Bournemouth have the power to throw a punch back quite quickly. They've got players which can do something out of nothing. And we had to be much sharper than we were across the game. I think it was definitely an improvement from the sort of opening spell. We definitely, as you say, Dan, Kearney came on and we were on the ball more and even sort of putting together a few attacks. Took us a bit of time to get a shot properly, but we definitely had that blueprint in place. But defensively, there are a few little errors being made which weren't addressed in the first half. I think on the ball, it was really alarming actually to see some of the poor movement of the ball around the pitch. Bassi, I don't know what's happened. He seems to have lost his cool. He's definitely got the the physical side sorted. But last season, I feel like he was the stronger out of him and Anderson. And this season, Anderson seems to have really taken over again. Like Bassi hasn't quite nailed down his positioning and composure on the left. Diop, great player for defensive situations. I do like him as like a rugged sort of figure to keep people out and such. But again, not the coolest figure on the ball. And a few times we gave it away quite cheaply from his footwork and stuff. And when you've got Castagna as well, again, he works really hard. He wants to be that sort of demanding figure on the right. But does Tete let Semenyo get round him quite as easily as that? Like, are we in a situation where he's able to strike at Leno if someone stops him from getting through the tightest of passages? And I think for as easy as it is to say, yeah, we should have won from this position, there are some underlying issues with our defence, which I think do need to be addressed, like in those mental battles where we're leading and we need to hold out and such.
Yeah, I think it's a confidence thing, really. And just the press, the relentlessness that Bournemouth play with. And as you mentioned, Dan, the conditions as well weren't helpful. We just did seem a little bit startled at the back, and there was some really poor, sloppy movement of the ball when we're under pressure and like trying to play out from the back and your heart's just in your mouth. Dan, did you want to say something?
I mean, just on Sess's goal, 2 things. One, it's a shame that us losing our heads has robbed us of what was actually a really special moment in that away end. The celebrations were magnificent. The great thing about that Bournemouth away end is that the players are basically in the stands when they celebrate with you. and the whole team was there. Obviously, everyone rushes forward down to the front. Really could have been really like an iconic goal this season. As it is, we will just forget about that now. That will just drift into obscurity. And the other thing is that I don't know how Samuel Chukwueze pulls that pass off, because I don't think anyone successfully played a nicely weighted ball in behind a defence all evening other than that, because the ball just kept on skipping on. It got picked up by the wind. The number of times Bournemouth tried to drop one over the top and it just skipped out of play. The fact that he managed to weight that pass so beautifully is a really promising sign. And I think this guy looks serious. I was excited. I was calling for Chukwueze to join in January when those rumours came, because I thought it was exciting. I'm really glad we've got it over the line now, and I think we're just going to start seeing him more and more. I think the defensive frailties that Owen mentions are spot on, but it's a shame, and it's also Bournemouth deserve credit, but we had them for the majority of that game. Their game plan, their attacking patterns, we had it covered. There was a lot of stuff over the top. I thought that the positioning of the centre-backs worked. I think the support that Joachim Andersen gets with people either side of him means he didn't get exposed with runs in behind. As we said, the conditions didn't suit direct over-the-top football, so the way that it usually have hurt us with Evan Nilsson's run in behind never came off. But then when we hit that last 15 and they threw on extra attacking bodies, they stopped trying to play behind us and played in front of us a little bit. And we just sat off them too much. I mean, that's the problem. Like, I think we'd sat off them quite a lot out of possession, and it worked because it stifled their way of attacking. But then when they changed it up, we didn't step. And like, we saw it for the equaliser. It's passive defending. We saw it for the second goal. That was even more passive and very frustratingly reminiscent of John McGinn's goal a week prior, or less than a week prior, of holes in the middle and also backline not stepping up to be aware of that danger. Stop letting Premier League footballers shoot from 25 yards from the centre of goal, because they are going to score. And then I actually don't give a toss about the third goal. Like, I'm actually I'd rather the third goal happen than we not commit the bodies forward to try and get an equaliser. And we were all complaining last weekend that we didn't try and go and get back in the game against Aston Villa. We did try and go and get a point out of this game in the final throws. And the fact that we conceded in the manner we did at the end of the game actually doesn't really matter. It was a bit, 2-1, 3-1. So what? At least we were going for it. I don't think you can criticise too much there, because we had everyone up for a corner. They broke well. They operated it well. Yes, we probably could have been a bit more organised and spotted the run at the back post, but it was all a bit frantic at that point anyway. The first two goals are where the issues need to be addressed.
No, I would have to agree. I mean, Bournemouth made, they switched it up, as you said. And I just think that after we go 1-0 up, there are so many opportunities there in which we could, if we were to match their, react to their tactical switch up, we could have been sort of 2 or 3 passes away from the break. They had like one centre back on that. Do you know what I mean? It's just like there's a huge opportunity there, and it was very frustrating. And I mean, like, I wasn't at the game, but you could hear it on the television, just the switch in the atmosphere of the ground after that Semenyo goal. And all of a sudden, Fulham are on the back foot, and we're trying to, defend with our lives. Let's just touch upon the goal, the Semenyo equaliser quickly, please, Cam, because I mean, he just jinks past Castañas if he's not there. He does do incredibly well. Obviously, we know he's a powerful, dynamic, skillful forward. And then through Leno's legs. Do you think we should be doing more in that situation, or is it just we're undone by a very talented player?
Well, one thing that can't be mistaken is that Semenyo is quite obviously in a bracket of his own at the moment. Easily the informed Premier League player, and I believe the most dangerous winger in the league, just for what he brings, his physicality and the trickery that goes alongside it as well. I like to call the Vitality the Selco Builders Warehouse, because upon arriving there, it does feel like you're going into kind of like a business estate, but we were completely dismantled by Semenyo yesterday. We always seem to concede absolute thunderbastard worldies. It's never like we just concede, routine passages of play. Whenever we give the opportunity for an opposition player to to let rip. They do, and boy, do they. But Semenyo's goal was just it was just genius from him, really. And Castagna got strung up left, right, and centre by him. And if I was a fullback, I'm not a fullback, so I can't really comment on it. But I would be going through him with everything I have. As soon as he gets towards that byline, as soon as you recognise that you are not going to beat him in a foot race, I would just lunge at him. Take a yellow, I'd even take a red in that situation, because alarm bells were ringing as soon as he got on the ball. And it was like that, more or less, in the final half an hour, he just had something extra to his game. When Fulham seemed to be tiring and we were backs up against the wall, he just found an extra gear, as he always does. He's an FPL cheat code as well. I mean, shamelessly, I captained him last night because I just knew he was going to do absolute bits for them. And I say that with chest. He got me 36 points, so nice one, Antoine. But what more can you say than it's just beguiling stuff from him along the left, and maybe Leno could have done better at the front post, but it's eye of the needle stuff as well. And he just seems to find that kind of X factor in this game when Bournemouth really need it. I just want to talk about Kluivert's goal as well while I'm here. I mean, what an unbelievable strike. I don't want to be blowing smoke up the opposition's arses, because that's not what we're all about. I want to be sitting here berating them as much as I possibly can do, but I was in the boozer last night watching it, and I was just absolutely gobsmacked at the way, his technique, even just to have the bollocks to take it on from that position there, with the wind swirling about and conditions being not favourable to a long range strike. Then again, I suppose if you're a keeper, it doesn't really favour you either. So I guess it's who blinks first wins or loses in this scenario. And just harping back to obviously the passiveness and the way that we set up and the way that we just allow teams to step onto us. It's true. Wading through treacle to try and shut him down. Tom Kearney is nowhere near a defensive player either. So when you've got Justin jinking past him as if he wasn't there and letting rip, it's another area where we definitely need to be looking at. And it's just a shame that Lukic wasn't on the pitch at that moment, because I'm sure he would have stamped it out. But take nothing away from Bournemouth. They're an absolutely fantastic side. Iraola's done an amazing job of galvanising them over the 2 years that he's been there. And they're certainly the team to beat. And we just came a cropper last night by 2, if not 3, absolutely astonishing goals. And at some point, Fulham have got to find that kind of magic in their own offensive play as well. I want to see Fulham. I want to see Fulham let rip from 30 yards. I want to see us smack the back of the net and rip the net off his stanchions as well. I want to see us absolutely decimate teams with some, mesmeric football going forward. And I believe we have the players to do that. And I completely agree. I think Chukwueze is going to make a difference. I agree with Dan. When the links came out in January that we were sniffing around him, I thought this is the player that is going to unlock a lot for us moving forward. It's hard to make an impact at AC Milan, especially when you're competing with the likes of Pulisic and Rafa Leao. But I always knew he had a little extra to his game as well, and I definitely compliment the way that we move forward. He's such an elusive player on the ball, and very, very hard to pin down. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him, and I'm sure that he can sprinkle a little bit of fairy dust onto the way that we approach things in the final third, moving into the next couple of weeks, and maybe playing against higher ranked opposition, maybe better calibre of player. That's no detriment to Bournemouth. I do think that there are some absolutely fantastic players in their squad roster, but maybe he'll come to life because he's used to playing obviously at the highest level out in Milan, and take the challenge in his stride.
I think the frustrating thing with the Semenyo equaliser, despite the fact that it is very good play from him, and Marco spoke about this, it's so preventable. And I've seen so much criticism thrown at Silva and for what happened yesterday. What you can't legislate for is in the moment when Semenyo has it outside the box on the flank, he's doubled up against by Samuel Chukwueze and Timothy Castagna, and they have it under control. And the frustrating thing is that in that defensive scenario, the person who does the correct thing is Samuel Chukwueze, our right winger, and the player who does the wrong thing is Timothy Castagna. And if you go and watch it back, there's two things I think people need to look at. One, as Semenyo starts to stand up against Castagna, Samuel Chukwueze points and shouts to him, go down the line. And what he's saying there is, I have the inside covered. If he cuts back inside, it's okay. I'm protecting this. You make sure you don't get beaten on the outside. But the way he defends it, Castagna, is if he doesn't have that support. And so he just lets him glide past him on the outside. And I don't know why he's let that happen, because it was so easy in that situation to prevent it. And then when you roll it on and it goes in, watch Samuel Chukwueze's reaction after it. He loses his mind because he said, I told you this is what you needed to do. And how does Marco prevent that? You know, that goal, for a start, that goal doesn't happen if Kenny Tete's on the pitch. But he's injured. He's the only right back option we've got. He's a good enough player to prevent that from happening. And that's frustrating because that's an individual error. And I think Marco was spot on in his analysis. We lost that game based on a couple of bits of individual quality, but also what he didn't mention is there was a couple of individual errors that, again, keep sneaking into our game that are costing us. It's not enough to play 90% of a good game. It isn't enough.
Do you think it's complacency? Do you think Castagna, in that situation, perhaps expects there not to be enough space for Semenyo to actually do anything from there, and just thinks, oh, we'll take the corner, we'll take a nice bit of defending here, and hopefully we'll be all right?
I think you're spot on. I think Sammy said the same thing to me. I think he thinks that there's not enough room for him to get round the side, and that's kind of it. It's lazy to an extent, and I think, yeah, complacent, and that's inexcusable because we're 1-0 up away from home, and you should be doing everything in that situation. If you give away a corner, it's fine. You know, we've dealt with that, and we dealt with their set pieces fine yesterday. We had 3 huge centre-backs on the pitch who were dealing with aerial threat. I just, I know Leno should probably also save it, but that he should never have got into the situation to get a shot off.
Yeah. It's extremely foolish, isn't it? It's extremely foolish defending, really, to give a player like Semenyo that kind of opportunity to get in the byline. And you're right. In that scenario, you've got to fly through them. You've take him out, put your studs through his legs, whatever you can do. I don't care. You cannot give a player like him the opportunity to get his head up and get his tail up at the same time, because he's just going to make a mockery of you, and he did last night. And we've got to learn from their mistakes, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, it was a goal that obviously turned the game around. The crowd were well and truly rallied, and that was the moment where you thought, okay, right, we got a job on our hands here. I just wonder whether, so Marco made a couple of subs at the 86th minute after the Kluivert goal had gone in. He brought on Adama and Smith Rowe, I think, for Iwobi and Diop. I think generally they were fairly ineffective, but I'm not going to throw too much criticism their way because they didn't have an awful lot of time to make an impact. I just question whether they should have come on sooner. I'm thinking immediately after the equaliser, to give themselves a little bit more time, to give the team a little bit more time to take the game back to Bournemouth. I just wonder whether it was a case of too little too late with the changes. Wondered what you thought.
Yeah, I think I agree. Traore is he's a very clear player with what you get from him, right? He's rapid, he takes the ball and he just goes straight to the other end of the pitch. But Bournemouth at this point in the game, at the 86th minute, didn't necessarily have to worry about him as much because they had bodies back. They had players ready to absorb his pressure. And so, as we see with Traore a lot, when he had the ball, he didn't really do a lot with it. I think there was one cross which went off quite well, and it went to Kearney, who sadly couldn't keep his shot on target. But then the next one, I think, went straight out of play for a goal kick. So, yeah, you're sort of in that familiar frustrated position where you need a clinical execution, and he can't really provide it. And Smith Rowe, I mean, it's really frustrating because I really like him. I think there's something really special there, but it's just buried under like a mix of injuries, a lack of confidence, and also just not enough physical tenacity to really make a difference in too many games. Bournemouth weren't challenged by him. When he's in the box, they didn't feel like there was anything that would have been particularly dangerous. And you contrast that to who Bournemouth brought on, Justin Kluivert, who basically came on and did the same energetic runs that everyone else was doing. Gannon Doak, who, for as much as when he came on, I was thinking, well, this isn't the sort of powerhouse name I'm expecting. But you saw at the end, he took the ball all the way from his own half and set up the third goal. He was someone who doubled down on that wing with Brooks and started really going Sessegnon some questions. And I think that's a big difference. The substitutes that we bring on sometimes aren't the game-changing, explosive players, or don't have the confidence of moment to really turn a moment into a goal or turn something on its head like Bournemouth did. And if Bournemouth players can do that, why can't ours? Can Marco Silva find the right solution? I mean, I feel like it's not, as you said, it's a really, there was a way for us to win that game. And I think the substitutes can be a big part of it and have been in the past. But there's something not quite there for a few of them at the moment. And it's really a bit frustrating.
I really need Marco Silva to get out of his own stubbornness and out of his own head at the moment, because I think one of the areas that we threw this game away was actually from the composition of the bench. You don't need three wingers on the bench. What you need there is not to have one singular central midfielder. The change that would have solidified us, which in hindsight now is probably what we should have done. I'd still argue that we could have gone for the kill and won that 2 or 3-0 and just kept pressing. But we did neither. We sat in the mid space of doing neither pushing for a second nor sitting back and solidifying. I think the change that ideally you make there is you probably take that false 9-ish role that we were playing, you drop that a little bit deeper, sit it into a midfield 3, you have your 2 wingers who play high and provide a bit of counter-attacking threat. But we couldn't make that change because he refused to put Harrison Reed on the bench. And it's like we had the same issue last week, but on the other angle, he refused to put Kusi-Asare on the bench. And he needs to stop this. But I agree that the composition of the squad is imbalanced. But it's not like we didn't have the option to have 2 central midfielders on the bench. In the same way, when we're pushing for an equaliser, we had the option to throw a striker on. And his stubbornness and his reluctance to just like thrust people who he doesn't fully trust or doesn't rate enough to put them on the pitch is costing us at the moment, and he needs to stop doing it, because whilst yes, Harrison Reed is probably drifted out of being good enough to be a part of the best Fulham squad we've seen in a very long time, he's still a competent Premier League footballer. So you are able to play him.
He's got a lot more defensive acumen than Kearney does. I don't think Reed loses Kluivert in the same way Kearney struggled to muster up, which I think is really harsh because Kearney is such a lovely footballer. And as we've said, he really made a difference in sort of stabilising Fulham to begin with. But can he last what was essentially a full game for him? And I don't really think he can, especially against a team like Bournemouth, who basically have a team of athletes, right? Everyone they brought on was sprinting and running and getting from A to B really quickly. And Kearney's just not that person. And frustratingly as well, he seemed to, I think he knew that he'd sort of let Kluivert have the chance to score. And so we saw he took quite a few long shots and sort of quick volleys and stuff towards the end of the game. And none of them, I think one was on target but got blocked, and 2 of them were quite off target. And it's a shame because he can score them, but he almost, like, I get that he wants to take responsibility, and it's good. A captain should do that. But I don't know, like he needs to hone what he's doing a little bit in those moments too, because you can't really, when the game's running out that quickly, just blast the ball and hope for the best.
Yeah, I just like we're all pissed off, right? How the summer went. We all think that we should have conducted ourselves differently, but it's happened, and there's now actually like I'm starting to side on the leadership higher up of the club, because I'm getting fed up with Marco being at loggerheads with them and trying to prove a point. It's like, get over it. Get out of your own head. Get over it. You have been given just marginally just enough tools to do what you need to do. But the second that you write off a couple of members of the squad because, oh, well, I wanted to replace them and I couldn't, big deal. Big deal. You've got 6 months where this is your squad. Use it.
I mean, yeah, we've had a lot of questions regarding the personnel and the people that we had available on the bench that weren't seeing this in this kind of discussion point on I don't know, potential protest from Marco. So we'll come on to that in part 2. Let's take a breather for now. But I guess wanted to round up this part 1 with, yes, last night was frustrating, but Bournemouth second in the division, unbelievable quality. incredibly strong at the Vitality, and I think we did all right. I don't think it was the absolute shit show that that maybe some people are kind of interpreting it as. And I do believe that, as Dan said, that we've got enough in this squad to be good and have a successful season. And we're still very early days, still gelling in some big signings, and I still think we're going to be all right. So
I think the frustrating thing is that, in the same way that Forest did it last year, the position Bournemouth are currently in, it could have been us. There's no reason why we couldn't be second in the league at the moment, because there was a game to be won last weekend. There was a game to be won last night. And had we done what we needed to do and how we should have conducted ourselves, we would be second in the league right now. And that's the frustrating thing, is that we're watching other teams have that extra little percent and get over the line in games that maybe they weren't expecting to, or they shouldn't have done. And we're not doing that. And that's the frustrating part.
And then the other frustrating bit is the fact that this is sort of the first game we've lost, which we can't, like the Chelsea game and the Aston Villa game had absolute rubbish decisions from the officials and such. And I think that clouds a lot of the our perception of those defeats. This one, unequivocally, our own defenders basically gave the win to them. And as you say, Bournemouth have really excelled in a way that we could be if things had gone a little bit differently. So there's that frustration in it also being the second 3-1 defeat that we were leading in as well, which maybe a bit in a few months' time, if we've turned things around, we'll sort of think, okay, well, Bournemouth are a really good side at the moment, and it's not really the end of the world to lose to them. It's that raw sort of emotion we're feeling after, not a day after the game, which is affecting how we're viewing this one as well.
Yeah.
What we got to do is just stop shitting the bed when we're in the ascendancy. We need to put a tie on, put a shirt on, get to work properly, boys. That's all we need to do. We just need to stop pandering around and thinking everything's going to be all right for a 1-0 goal deficit in the Premier League. It's absolute nonsense talk. Do your jobs and do it right. That's all we've got to do, and just grow a pair of bollocks as well.
We'll leave part one there. Thank you, Cam. Don't go away. We'll be right back with some of your questions. It's the Fulhamish podcast. I'm George. I'm joined by Owen, Cam, and Dan. Now, Fulhamish is proud to be brought to you by My Kind of Cruise. It's the world's first ever booking app and website. Whether you're a seasoned cruiser or embarking on your maiden voyage, My Kind of Cruise is the perfect place to book a different kind of away day to the ones that we may be used to, and hopefully ones that were a lot less wet than Friday nights. You can get unbeatable prices, every kind of cruise option you can think of, ice fishing to sun in your face in the Caribbean. It's founded by a fellow Fulham fan, and Fulhamish listeners can get an exclusive discount with the code Fulhamish at checkout. So all you need to do is head to mykindofcruise.com, download the app on Apple or Google Play Store. Right, we have got some questions. I've taken them from Instagram. I'm gonna jump straight into the JKA situation because we've had a few questions about this. We kind of touched upon it in part one, but it's so obviously we had a striker available on the bench yesterday. He wasn't brought on. Obviously, he's a young player, 18. Got brought in from Bayern Munich in the summer. 4 million with a loan with an option to buy, I believe it was in the end. I think that's right, isn't it? It was an option to buy. He didn't feature yesterday. And it was a game that arguably we were crying out for a striker. And there was a lot of speculation after the Villa game as to whether he would, be starting. That's where we were at because, we tried a few things now and it hasn't really paid off. So Christopher Wilkes asked, is Jonah actually going to play? And Ive Wright, again on Instagram, said, why do we sign Jonah if we're not going to play him when Raul and Muniz are injured? It's a very valid point. Owen, where are you kind of at with this debate? Because I guess the two sides of it are, rightly so, what is the point of signing a striker, third choice striker, if when you need a third striker, you're not going to play him? Like, surely there's almost no point in signing whatsoever. But then again, maybe, Marco's seen him on the training ground and doesn't deem him up for standard, and genuinely with what he's got at his disposal feels like the better option in that game, in that particular scenario, is to play wingers as a false nine, whatever he wants to do. I don't know. Like where do you stand with it? Do you think he should have come on last night?
I think it's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because ultimately, Marco Silva is in the best position to deem what is right for his squad, right? And we've benefited a lot from his guidance and his tactics and such. And part of me wants to say, if he believes that the player's not ready to play for a Premier League side, then there's an element of trust you have to afford to him. It's not as though the other options on the bench are unworthy. They're players, some of whom he's worked for quite a number of years now. But then the alternative is, as you say, we needed a striker. We needed someone to offer a threat to Bournemouth's defence, especially in quite a tight situation. And you've got someone who is tall, who has their pace, and could have offered something different, which Fulham were crying out for. I think it's really strange that he hasn't played a minute so far, and it doesn't really bode well if we're at this point, and especially with two strikers injured as well. I think that's a really sort of strange element of it, when you've got no first team strikers fit and you've got one on the bench and we just don't use him. It's really bizarre. I'm hoping that after the international break, maybe he'll have a bit of time to bed into the squad. We've got a game against lower league opposition coming up in the Cup. That might be the perfect opportunity to at least give him some minutes and he can sort of demonstrate that he'd have some suitability. But it's a really strange one. And I think that we really need to sort of get it sorted, Silva, because if it sort of rolls on, there's an element of potential upset that might occur within the squad if we're not using someone who could be doing something good for the club.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because I heard a lot of people saying that, it can be quite detrimental to young players to throw them into the mix when they're not ready. It can have a big effect on their confidence. But on the flip side of that, if you're the third choice striker and both your main strikers are injured and you're still not getting played, then I would argue that that's going to have a big old effect on your confidence as well. I mean, Dan, you sort of spoke about it briefly in part one, but do you believe that there's an element of protest against the board here from Marco in benching him but not playing him as a sort of message to say you didn't give me what I wanted, that he's not good enough?
Yeah, maybe to an extent. I would like to think he's above that. He's an incredibly stubborn man, but I'd really hope that his desire to be the best he can be and to produce the best Fulham he can produce would quash that stubbornness. I think it just also stems from a part. I think there's an element of the stubbornness. It's not the player he wanted. So when he sees him, he's looking for faults. He's looking for reasons why he shouldn't play. And what I can't wrap my head around is, I think with 10 minutes to go, 2-1 down, is that not the perfect time to throw on a young striker? Because what does every 8+ years old kid dream of? From between the age of 8 and 88, what do we all think of when we're like, if I was a professional footballer, can you imagine being 2-1 down and being chucked on and you score the equaliser? That's what you dream of, right? And I think that's the perfect situation. Be like, you can't have a negative impact in that scenario. You've got 10 minutes. At worst, you have no impact. At best, you contribute to an equaliser. And I just don't get why that didn't happen. I think it's one thing being starting him, and I called for him to start, and maybe that was foolhardy. But with 10 minutes to go, you need a goal. I think he's on the bench itching to get on there, surely. Any professional footballer in that scenario is looking like, I can make an impact here. And what's the worst that could possibly have happened with him on the pitch? What he gives the ball away. It's and what? Just go up and cause a bit of chaos. If it doesn't come off, it doesn't come off. But I think it's far better than the alternative, which was what we did, was throw on another winger. We were fine out wide. There was no issues out wide. The problem was that we didn't have anyone in the box. I don't know.
I think the elephant in the room with all of this, and I really hope this isn't the case, is that he's just not good enough. Like that's what it's starting
How
to
bad can he be?
look like.
How bad can he realistically be? Like Everton start Beto. Like how bad can Jonah Kusi-Asare actually be if he can't get onto a Premier League pitch?
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
Bayern Munich as well, right? Like,
Yeah, you can't rock up to Fulham from Bayern Munich with a reputation which stands as Baby Ishak and be absolutely arse at football. He's quite obviously a decent young prodigy. You don't get that kind of moniker of just being absolutely toilet. I thought it was a great opportunity. I completely agree to see what he's all about when the going gets tough, when the chips are down. Is he somebody that's going to find something in their game, is going to dig us out of a difficult situation? If we're not going to play him, and Marco is being his stubborn self, and we need a third choice striker, why can't we look inwardly and maybe promote Lepardo B from the under-21s? I mean, he's scored 10 goals in 9 games at the start of the season. He's another young player that I think's got a big future ahead of him. He's a prospect as well. It's down to them. It's down to them two to maybe vie for that third position. So again, I just think the management was wrong in the closing stages last night, and yeah, I completely agree. If you're going to blood a player, that is completely right scenario and environment to do it in, because you'll see exactly what he's all about. And if he's absolutely dog shite, don't play him. And if he actually puts himself about and gives a good showing, then maybe he works himself into a bit more contention moving forward.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we definitely were crying out for is just somebody in the middle to get on the end of, you know, the balls that were getting put in, because there was just nobody there at all. We've got a question here, Owen, from Hussein, who says, at the end of the game when we're losing, why don't we put Bassi/Anderson up top, or even you could just put D up? Do you think that at least could have, given us some kind of target, because there just was not one? It's, I guess, a fairly agricultural solution, but I don't know, just if you're not going to bring on your 6'4" centre forward, we just needed somebody to aim at. Do you think that could have been a solution?
I think on paper, yes, definitely. I like the idea of you put the cross in, the centre back's there, just towers over everyone, knocks it down into the goal. On the other hand, Anderson missing a bicycle kick in that sort of similar situation directly led to a third goal being scored against us. So I can see why they don't instantly rush to that. I think the obvious solution, which solves even that question, is bringing on the 6'5", 6'4", whatever striker who's sat on the bench and could easily have been in that situation and should hopefully be used to those situations. Because, as we've all sort of said, I mean, he's made it this far in football. He's been to Bayern Munich and he's got comparisons to Isak. So it's not as though, what can he be doing in Fulham training that is so appalling that Silva's like, no, this guy cannot play a minute. I think that definitely you should be able to be versatile, and I like the idea of putting someone tall to get onto a cross. But equally, there needs to be some rhyme or reason to it, and it shouldn't be like, I think if Bassi Anderson starts going up front, you then really start to ask, well, is this as effective as if we had the actual striker coming on? So yes, if it's like the closing minutes and you absolutely need to get a goal, yeah, sure, throw centre back up front. But the solution is, I think, in the previous sort of question and discussion, in that we have to hopefully have someone persuade Silva that yes, this option we've got on the bench here can be useful, even if only for a few minutes.
Yeah, Dan touched upon the sort of frustration at the composition and perhaps not optimum utilisation of our bench. Cam H. Butter has asked, why aren't Kevin and Chuck starting? I guess it's like, I saw a comment on YouTube on the Quick Take as well, which was kind of to this point as well, is that how many squads in the Premier League have their 2 record signings on the bench? And obviously, like, the obvious answer would be, the new signings that came in late, they're still getting integrated into the squad. But do you think it's going to be long before we start seeing the likes of Kevin and Chukwueze starting? Or do you think that Silva's going to continue with his favoured 3 as he has been doing so far?
Well, as we know, yeah, Silva does have his favourites, and it's very hard for him to deviate away from that. But as I say, I mean, we're yet to see the best of Kevin. He had that cameo against Leeds where he was electrifying, and caused so many issues, and we just need to see that much more on a regular basis. Chukwueze, I don't think it's very long until we see him in a starting 11. He's quite obviously lifted our game, and I'm sure as the weeks and months progress, Silva's thought process will change in the selection process, because they are both absolutely fantastic players, and we should utilise them a lot more than just off the bench, because they're far more than just impact players. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be particularly long until they're ripping things up for Fulham, and they've certainly got the talent and potential to do that on a weekly basis for 90 minutes as well. But also at the same time, it's bedding them in, it's trying to make sure that they're comfortable in the new surroundings as well, without putting too much pressure on them early doors, because that can be detrimental to a player's mentality. You want to make sure that they're ready, fit and firing, and they're prepared to obviously make that difference when we need them to. But you're right. I mean, you've got ESR on the bench, who's formatively a record signing, and you've got Kevin on the bench as well, smashing our record, transfer record this summer. They've both got to be itching to get back onto starting matters, to see their names in the starting 11 again, and I think you're going to see a different side to both of those players, all three of those players really, Chukwueze, ESR and Kevin, moving forward, because quite obviously, if we're not necessarily picking up the results we need to with the personnel we have on the pitch to start with, particularly last night, then they've got to come in and ruffle some feathers, haven't they, and do it in the most positive way possible, and that's goals and assists. So watch this space. Hopefully we'll see them do their thing very, very soon.
Yeah, I think Marco's managing them both correctly at the moment, to be honest. I know it is not great for a club like us to have dropped what is such a substantial amount of money in our financial position on two players, and they haven't started a league game this season. But I think Smith Rowe's being managed correctly, because I think this period of time where he's getting eased into games, being brought on after 60, 65 minutes, is kind of working for him. I think he's almost starting afresh, and I think that pressure that existed last season, the fact that he's not in the limelight as much at the moment, is probably helping his confidence a little bit. And weirdly, I think some people would say, oh, it's not going to help his confidence that an 18-year-old starting over him every week, but just that limelight off him, I think, is probably not a bad thing. And I think we will see him. I think there is a starting berth for him in this team, and I'd actually really love to see how you could make a midfield work that had Josh King and Smith Rowe in it. I think it's not for the next two games. It's not for Arsenal at home. It's not for Newcastle away. But it could work. I think there is a potential balance there that it could operate quite nicely. And for Kevin, we spoke about it last week, Coops. He's electric and he's going to be great. But you still see every time he's come on since that Leeds game where we all got a bit carried away, there are reasons why he's not starting. There are reasons there, and those reasons will fade. Like those stuff will come out of him, and he'll start to become the player that we paid £40 million for. But for now, the right option for me is leaving him on the bench, giving a bit of a simple remit of 30 minutes to go and have an impact. And I think that's the sort of thing he needs, as opposed to start and then he's got to think about all of the defensive responsibilities he's got to think about how he gets into the attacking shapes. Whereas that freedom of just be impactful is a bit simpler, and I think the right way to go about it at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with all of that from both of you. I think that you can definitely tell that Chukwueze's had that European experience and that sort of time to mature as a player, whereas Kevin's got the talent, he's got the athleticism, but he's not quite the polished article. And when you're playing in a tough Premier League battle, it's late Friday night, he wasn't at it really. Whereas Chukwueze, not only giving guidance to his teammates and linking up quite nicely, we talked about his role with Castagna earlier, the assist for Sessegnon, lots of little moments where he's linking nicely with players in quite tight spaces. He's ready to start, and hopefully after the internationals, we should see him getting an opportunity to start at right wing. Because I think Wilson, long-time servant of the club, he's done really well, but you need to give him some challenges to say, well, you're not guaranteed this place, because last night, for instance, he really wasn't on it. On Smith Rowe, actually, I do think it's important to remember he is battling injury, and he has sort of had to have a bit of a layoff pre-season and such. So you do need to, as we sort of said, and as Silva's doing, really give him the time to get back to his best football, because he is a great talent, but he's someone who isn't going to just be able to click back into gear given all the stuff that's happened to him. So in some ways, it's good for him to have King taking his slot, because it says you're great and we do like and enjoy your football and such, but you've got to work yourself back to a level of fitness to get back into the team starting. And then once they do, there's a really good set of players there. I do think it's completely justified to be excited and happy about the players that Silva's got at his disposal. We've just got to hopefully see it all form together and get themselves into a run of games they look consistently good in, instead of sort of flashes and cameos and things not quite clicking.
Yeah, for sure. We do have a lot of cause for positivity as well. We've got another question here from Lewis Dan, who asks, why is everyone sleeping on how good Cess has been so far? In my opinion, he's been player of the season so far. Early stages, but I would have to agree. I thought Cess was brilliant yesterday. All of our attacking impetus, especially in the first half, was all the joy was down that left-hand side. Obviously got the goal as well. You just have a couple of words on Cess and how well he's been performing in Robinson's absence. But yeah, he's having a great start to the season.
It's hard to find many better examples of like a reinvigorated, revitalised career than what's happened to Cess since he joined just over a year ago. And that's, again, this is a really great example of how you manage a player who's been through it a bit, had injury troubles, had massive confidence issues. It took him a long time to actually get on the pitch last season. But my God, like this is a Cess I've not seen before. Like the performance he's put in from left wing back in this season and also at left back, I would argue is the best football he's played in his whole career. And that's coming from a position where he was Championship player of the season. I think actually as a rounded footballer, this is the best he's ever been. It's incredible. We used to all say that Cess can't defend. He's great going forward, but he's not a left back. I don't know where he's got this defensive stability from, but he was excellent. And very little joy came down that Bournemouth's right, our left last night across that whole game. And that was due to his lovely little partnership with Calvin Bassey. I think they doubled up really nicely. And I was speaking to Sammy about it yesterday. The only times that Cess ever got beat on the outside was actually when he knew he had the safety blanket of Calvin Bassey behind him, who could come in and tidy it up. Otherwise, he was superb defensively. He like the fact that he had no hamstrings a year and a half ago, and yesterday he was able to just do up and down for 90 minutes to, even like as we hit 96 minutes, he was the one providing the overlap. He must have been shattered, but it's incredible. I'm so happy, and it's like to see him scoring goals for Fulham is so wonderful, but to see him putting in, he was my man of the match. I think up until we went 2-1 down, it might have been Kearney, but actually when you take everything that happened, I think it's got to be Cess. The real question is, like, how does Anthony Robinson get back in this side? Because you can't.
Move Cess forward, right? You move Cess to left wing, and then Robinson can link up nicely with him on the overlap, knowing that he's got someone who's capable.
I love the sound of that. I'm all here for that. I think that's the move. After the international break, I'm all here for it personally. I think he's been brilliant.
Yeah, he's been marvellous, and his intelligence, his footballing intelligence, has always been there. Like we saw it. Like whenever anyone asked, when we were in the Championship and he was scoring goals, and non-Fulham fans would be like, "Oh, this Sessignon." I was like, he's scoring a lot of goals. Like, what's he all about? And you'd be like, he's good at football, but actually his football brain is superb, and he just knows where to be. And now he's flourished into, I feel like his physicality, and he's grown into his body a bit. And now he's combined that with his footballing IQ and brought on defensive strength. Wow. Like what? On a free as well. On a free. And he's come home. And, it's lovely.
I was going to say, he's definitely eating his greens, hasn't he? He's downing off about 12 egg whites every hour, isn't he? He's definitely bulked up. He's carrying it so well.
Sure.
But I completely agree. I think, the New Malden area is such a hotbed for young talent. I know that far too well myself playing against them at youth level, and they just rip you to pieces. And Ryan Sessegnon is cut from the best of the cloth really around this area, and it was only a matter of time before he really grew into himself, and he's doing it for the famous Fulham. Last night he was excellent. He barely got shrugged off the ball, and again, like Dan says, his football IQ is just developed in such a way where he's game savvy, you know, and he just knows when to stick and when to twist. And he gives the ball when he needs to as well, but also at the same time when he needs to assert himself, he just has he just has it in his locker now, and it's such a great thing to see. And absolutely right, he and Robinson, if we can shoehorn them into the same team, which we definitely can do. Think of the think of the balance we have along that left hand side. It's stuff of dreams, and surely it's only a matter of time till we see that come to fruition, because I don't see Cess being dislodged from the starting 11 anytime soon either.
Yeah, I think you can definitely tell that he, the time he spent at Tottenham, whilst it was plagued of injury, getting to work with people like Antonio Conte has really taken him to another level. As you combine that with getting more physical, improving his fitness, the sort of even being thrown into the deep end, right? Because Robinson was such a good player for quite a long time, and replacing him at left back whilst he's been injured and recovering and such is no easy task. But he's stepped up to the plate, and now, as you've said, he's been one of the best players, arguably the best player this season. So it's definitely something to be very proud of for him, and yeah, he should be staying in this team because he's been too good to drop.
Yeah, I preface this with I don't think it's going to happen, because actually I don't think Fulham are going to be good enough this season and pull up enough trees for it to get notice. But left back and left wing back is a bit of a weak spot in this England side as well. And I think if Fulham had been able, at this point, with that goal last night as well, and if we'd have put in the proper performance at West Ham, Aston Villa, and we were second in the league, I think people start taking notice of Ryan Sessegnon. Like there are spots in that England side, and I think he's going to just miss out, because if I'm looking at it, you've got in there Jed Spence, Miles Lewis-Skelly. But I don't think he's far off those two. Like in ability-wise and the performance he's putting out, he is not a long way off that quality.
Bang on, Cookie. Honestly, I think you bang on with that, because you can play Miles Lewis-Skelly more central anyway. It's kind of like the Zinchenko role they call it. And on his day, I think it'd give Jed Spencer a pretty tough run for his money if we're gonna be putting him in starting berths potentially in the England squad. I don't see why he can't be in that conversation. Tuchel's obviously got his ear to the ground at the moment, and he's sounding out some players, and he's just getting his roster sorted. There's a busy couple of months ahead from him in terms of his selection process. So if Cess carries on the same trajectory he's currently enjoying at the moment, I see no reason why he can't be considered for a playing seat next summer. We'll just have to wait and see, but it's going to be exciting finding out.
Oh, it'll be a proud moment if/when Cess does get that England call up. I'm gonna say when. But it's a lovely note to end on. I think a bit of a Cess loving, cause for positivity. I guess all that's left to do is to name this pod. Dan, what was your favourite 3-word review? What should we cap it off with?
I think this one really does just sum up my evening, and tied in with my kind of cruise. I felt like I was thrown overboard last night, so I've got to go with Samuel Seastone's Drown and Out.
Okay, we'll do it. Owen, thanks very much for joining us, man. Fantastic showing on your debut. Much like Kevin, he's impressed with his flair. But
let's have a fizzle out.
yeah. Time will tell, eh? Cam, great to have you back, mate.
Thanks for having us back. Abosh.
Thank you very much, and cheers, Dan. You never have to talk about this game ever again now. You're at ease. Well done. Thanks for your time.
I was just about to say I'm not going to watch football for the next 2 weeks. I can't wait. So cheers, Coops.
Yeah, we'll be back on Thursday, but until then, have a great weekend, and we'll see you back after we take on Arsenal at the Cottage. You whites.